glorify you, Jesus. Magnify you, Lord. You're worthy of the glory, Lord.
The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Last week we concluded with the fact that the success of your leaving and cleaving, even if it's a career, college, or to be married, the success of that is directly related to the authority that you show the most honor to. And today, what we're going to be looking at is, we're still looking at the parent-child relationship, and it's piggybacking off of that. But today, what we're going to look at is reestablishing roots. This is something that, and you all have known since I've started this particular part of the Faith Like Gravity series. This particular part has been one of the more difficult parts for me. Not because life has been bad, not because things aren't good, not because of any of that. What this part of this series requires is it requires for you to look at things that you don't necessarily like to look at. It requires you to really challenge how you grew up, how you view things, how you approach things. All of this challenges every bit of that. And to have that challenged on such a high level, because when you're going, and some of you weren't here, but those of you that were here know that we did a series of family, church, kingdom of God, and kingdom of heaven. And all of those parts, you actually go in succession. You grow up in a family, you're born into a family. And it's from that family that you actually should learn how to follow God, that you should really learn about who God is. That doesn't always happen. But at some point, then you transfer from that family to church. And a lot of people think that church is it, and it's not. Then you go from church to the kingdom of God, which is within you. And then from the kingdom of God, you begin to function in the kingdom of heaven. That particular process is a difficult process, because it requires you to begin to look back and realize that sometimes what you got in family wasn't enough to help you succeed in the places that you've got to go in life. And see, God has built us to where we're to go beyond where we grew up. And that's hard. That is really hard. That is not a simple thing to do, because it requires you to actually look at it and say, okay, yeah, this has worked, but is it really what's best for me? It's worked this way for this long, but now I'm getting to a point to where it seems like this is not working. What needs to be done? And that's when you need to transfer from the church into the kingdom of God and really begin to function that. And then even after you get into the kingdom of God, because the kingdom of God is within you, then you have to know how to begin to establish the kingdom of heaven around you because of what you've got in you. And that's a big process. And truth of the matter is, you've already succeeded at it in some things. In some things you've already went through that entire process, but you haven't went through it in all of them. And that's why it's important to know about why reestablishing roots is so important. Because think of it like this. Earlier this week, everybody in here, I know, began to feel like nobody cared about you. You had a small sliver of time that it was just like, nobody's taking what I'm feeling into account right here. Nobody's really even looking at this like I look at this. And it might not have lasted long, or it might have lasted a couple of days. But see, here's the thing you got to understand about roots. Roots are underground. They are established in dark places. They're established in a place that really nobody sees what's going on. Even though it may be people who you feel like they're your family, they've been close to you, they've been all of that, but then when it gets to this point that you got to reestablish roots, it seems like you are miles away from everybody. Of course, y'all probably weren't feeling like that, were you? And see, it's in those moments that he's saying, okay, I need you to spread out. He's saying, because I'm about to take you to a higher level. But before I can take you to that higher level, you've got to spread yourself out enough to where how you extend your roots is actually going to be able to cover the level that your branches are going to come out once I exalt you. He said, that you're not going to stay in the dark. And see, that's what the enemy's been trying to get you to believe. You're going to stay in the dark. Everybody's going to keep ignoring you. Everybody's going to keep looking over you. Everybody's going to keep not paying attention to your opinion. Everybody's going to keep looking down upon you. Everybody is going to keep doing that. And see, that's what's been going on even across the nation. That's what led to all of those protests this week. Nobody's listening to us as black people. Nobody's paying attention to us. So we got to cry out. No, what you really need to do is spread out. What you really need to do is begin to understand how the kingdom of God really works. Because you're trying to bring about a change through a government that really is not thinking about you. But there is a God that's got a government that he wants you to function by, that he never leaves you. But yet we don't rely on him enough. We don't pay attention to him enough. So when our things are going rough and when we're feeling that isolated, desolated feeling, he's saying, I'm trying to spread you out even more. Because the length that I need for you to spread out is going to be directly coinciding with the way you're going to branch out when it's time for you to be seen. And see, that's what all of this dark time is about. And that's why all of these seasons, we go through these seasons every year. The difference is being able to recognize what you're supposed to be spreading out. And see, what you're supposed to be spreading out and reestablishing roots in are your relationships. That's what's been going on. That's what's been happening. During this time, he's saying, I need for you to put my roots in the ground concerning these relationships. These that you have around you, some of them I'm going to have you keep. Some of them I'm going to have you let go. Some of them I'm going to have you to build. Some of them I'm going to have you to downsize. You've got to understand and find out what he wants you to do in all of those relationships and in all those circumstances. And if you don't learn how to do it properly, you're going to find yourself in a deficient place when you actually should be in an exalted place. And that's what he's establishing. That's what he's trying to show. That's why you can't take everybody with you. It's not possible. It ain't meant to happen. Don't try it. Trust me. Everybody can't go where you're going. And you've got to know how to determine who's supposed to go, who's supposed to stay, who you're supposed to keep a line connected with, who you're supposed to totally disconnect from. For the past 3 weeks, I have had to go through a mentality that nobody in here probably understands of what it really takes to have to look at how do I function as a pastor? How do I function as a co-worker? How do I function as a father, as a husband, as friends, as all of that? And how do I keep all of those connections in the right way? So I got to take and go and look at every single one of them. And eventually you'll have to do that. You're not held to the high standard that I'm held to right now. But I have to look at that in such a way that I've got to go through, and even with my coworkers, and Lord knows some of them have tried my patience. But I have to look at that and say, okay, Lord, I'm ready to send this one to the corner. And he said, nope, open up your arms. And then the ones that I'm thinking, okay, open up your arms to, keep the connection, he said, nope, cut it off. What? I got this over here. He said, nope, cut it off. They're not hearing you. This is not a connection you're supposed to have. Cut it off. This one over here, enhance it. Give this one, feed this one. So I'm having to give food to somebody. I'm like, okay, how's that going to work? So it worked out. Is that a coincidence? No. But all of it had to happen at a proper time. Now I'm telling you this before we get into the scriptures, because I want you to understand that everything that we're going to be looking at about reestablishing roots, it challenges. It really does. Because you have your mentality at stake. It's your peace of mind that's at stake. Because if you cut the wrong thing or keep the wrong thing, it's still going to cause a struggle up here. And that's, you know, this week, you know how you look at those movies and they'll have a bomb on there that's got all the different colored wires on there, and they're trying to figure out which one to cut and which one they're supposed to keep connected and all of this stuff. That's what this week has been like for me. Because you're looking at all these connections like, can I pull that can I cut it? It's like, man, all right, here we go. And that is what reestablishing roots is really about. That's why it's been so challenging, because it's not simple. Because you even have to look at family members and say, hey, I can't keep this kind of connection with you, because keeping this kind of connection is taking away my peace of mind. It's keeping me from branching out and being who I'm supposed to be. Not because they're a bad person, not because you're a bad person, not because you're better than them, but